Kawahine ui e hula na mai E nun bonito traje de luna He nani I ono Ho na pe I ka poli Ho pili corazon Kawahine aloha
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, members. The meeting of the Housing, Human Services, and Transportation Committee will now come to order. It is 1:39 p.m. on Thursday, November 2nd, 2017. Before we begin, may I please request that we all turn off or silence our cell phones or other noise-making devices. At this time, I'm your committee chair, Stacy Crivello. And I want to thank my committee vice chair, Robert Carroll, for being here.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Alika Atai, mahalo for being here.
Chair.
Thank you. And Councilmember Kelly King, thank you for making quorum.
Aloha, Chair. Sorry I was late.
Member Don Guzman is excused today, as well as Councilmember Ricky Hokama, and at the moment, Council Chair Mike White. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Corporation Counsel, Gary Murai, Deputy Corporation Counsel. Thank you for being here, Mr. Murai. And our department representatives for all items is our Director of Department of Housing and Human Concerns, Carol Ryman. Mahalo for being here.
Aloha, Chair.
And for our agenda item, HHT-24, we'll introduce Buddy Almeida, Housing Administrator, Department of Housing and Human Concerns. Aloha, Buddy. And our item for HHT-1(8) and HHT-33, Jolene Bryant, Chief Executive Officer, Maui Humane Society.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Cavello and committee members.
Thank you for being here. And our Committee Secretary, Tammy Reyes, our Legislative Analyst, Shelley Espileta, and Legislative Analyst, Saumalu Mataafa. Thank you for being here, people. We are facilitating and having this meeting with bare quorum. So if you have any requirements that you need to leave the meeting, please raise, and I'll take a recess. And sorry that we're having these kind of problems of not being able to meet full quorum. I think even our last meeting we had bare quorum. Anyway, from our Lanai District Office, we have Denise Fernandez.
Good afternoon.
afternoon, Chair. This is Denise Fernandez on Lanai, and there is no one waiting to testify.
Thank you. And from the Molokai District Office is Ella Elcon.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Ella Alcon on Molokai, and there is no one here waiting to testify.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you, ladies. In the event that we will have testifiers, please email our staff here. And members, for your information, our HANA office is closed today. Do we have any testifiers in the chamber?
Chair, there is no one waiting to testify.
Thank you. If we have no testifiers in the district office, nor do we have any in the chamber at galleries at this time, if there are no objections, I'd like to close testimony.
No objections.
Thank you. Members, today for our HHT-1(8), I have a presentation on county-funded resources and services provided by the Maui Humane Society, Department of Housing and Human Concerns. My intent today is to receive an update from our Humane Society, and it will allow us to have a better understanding of the ongoing issues facing the county's animal management program managed by the Maui Humane Society. But I would rather add to add further, I think sometimes we have to listen to all the good things that are happening at our Humane Society. So Chief Executive Officer Bryant has prepared a presentation to aid in our discussion. And with her today is the Director of Humane Enforcement, Mr. Mark Wilson. Thank you for being here. And Jamie Fitzpatrick, Director of Operations. Mahalo. Members, I'm going to ask that we hold up on any questions or comments after we allow Ms. Bryant to do her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to come in, share with all of you the work that we're doing, the challenges, some challenges that we do have, and welcome any questions that you may have. So thank you. Okay, Maui Humane Society Animal Management Program. Our mission is very relevant to the work we do, and we did just revise this mission and update it in 2014. The Maui Humane Society's mission is to protect and save the lives of Maui's animals, accepting all in need, which we are contracted to do, educating the community, and inspiring respect and compassion toward all animals. So that we live that mission, and it's important to us. We have a partnership with Maui County, and we developed that partnership in 1987, so this is our 30th year. And if we didn't have that partnership with Maui County, we would not be able to do the work that we do. We would not be the Humane Society that we are today. So it is definitely a necessary partnership, and I'll go into that a little just in a few slides here about why it's important that we do combine our resources for Maui's public, community, and the animals. Who do we serve? Well, who don't we serve, really? We help Maui's 90,000 pet owners, but we help a lot of the community that does not even own pets, and we do that through a variety of ways. Our enforcement department takes calls from people who don't currently have pets but may have an issue with somebody in their neighborhood who does, people who have found a lost animal, people who can't own a pet here but come in and spend time with the animals, and that helps enrich their lives. And that's just to name a few. We have a lot of programs. I could be here like many other nonprofits. I could be here all day going into detail, but we don't have that much time. So many of you are familiar with a lot of the programs that we have, and I'm happy to answer any questions on those at any time today. As partners, we share in many of our organization's expenses, and this is the allocation currently for this year. In blue is funding from the county, and in red is what we, Maui Humane Society, the private nonprofit that we are, it's what we, the expenses that we cover. And all of you, you did receive a handout on these presentations, correct? On this presentation? Oh, good. Okay.
Just to let you know, it's coming out funny on Granicus, so it's like 2 slides at once. I'm trying to make them bigger, but they're disappearing on me.
You have a handout too, though.
Oh, we had a, oh, okay.
Yes.
I'll use that then. Thank you.
I thought maybe you
you.
could use it as a reference later if there was any information you wanted to go back and see. This is our current fiscal 18 budget. As you can see, our entire budget for the shelter is almost $3.9 million. The county operations cover 44% of our entire operating budget. In the second bar there, the red is not what I want to focus on today, but I think it is worth mentioning, and I really do want all council committee members to know that Maui Humane Society does cover 18% of county contracted services. We would like to not do that, but currently we do, and we have been. It does fluctuate each year, the percentage, based on outside funding that we receive, more grants and things like that. But for fiscal 18, Maui Humane Society is supplementing the county contract, the cost for us to perform those services by 18%. Sheltering. So we currently have 3 grants, if you will. One is for animal sheltering, one is for humane enforcement, and one is for spay and neuter, to subsidize spay and neuter in our community. For the animal sheltering, for fiscal 19, we requested a 7% increase. I want to be clear that that 7% wasn't necessarily just asking for more funding. What we're really asking for, if we go back to the previous screen, 18% of what we currently fund, dollar amount for the county, dollar amount is $382,000. We're asking for $65,000 of that. I wanted to be realistic. I didn't want to ask for all of it. I know that a lot of agencies need a lot of funding, but we were asking for the 65. We would like to just fund a little bit less. We would use that for salary increases to align ourselves with the national industry averages for shelter workers, animal shelter workers. Some facility upgrades. We've been at our facility long past when we realistically should have been. We try the best we can to make our facility look inviting and nice, but it is very aging and it needs constant improvements. And then for program improvements. So this was part of the agenda, or part of the request of me was to share challenges that we currently have and budgetary needs. Humane enforcement. The goal for humane enforcement is to humanely enforce animal-related laws with an emphasis on preventing animal cruelty and enhancing animal care and safety through education. Our enforcement department offers 24/7 animal emergency on-call service. We started that, it'll be 2 years in April. Okay. And this last year or so for fiscal 17, they received 771 calls for assistance from the public and Maui Police Department since the inception of that program in 2016. That's just after hours. That's not daily, during our operating hours during the day. Almost 13,000 requests for service in fiscal 17. Follow-ups and officer-initiated patrols were completed. And they responded to 510 calls in fiscal 17 regarding cruelty and neglect of animals in our community. And they picked up 511 stray dogs in fiscal 17. And those were ones just running at large, not the ones that our community found and brought into us. Our current staffing levels allow MHS to enforce regularly and allow MHS enforcement to regularly service the West Side and service Hana once a week. And if you'll remember, when I was this last budget session, and I was in testifying and asking for an increase for enforcement, it was to add the 2 officers that we desperately needed so that we could provide service to these outlying areas. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Our officer that we did hire isn't fully trained yet, but she is well on her way. Oh, I'm going to go back. And that is our team in that lower picture. Mark's not in there, but he's up top. So we have a very dedicated animal enforcement team. And here, I'd like to introduce you to the 2 staff persons that you did approve funding for this last year. So it was 1 full-time officer, and that's Officer Julia Chambers. We hired her in July. It takes a full 6 months for a new officer to be completely trained and able to work fully and independent in our community. So again, she's on her way. She's about 4 months into that. And then dispatcher Lorraine Matthews. She was the part-time dispatcher. This last year, council did approve the funding. Combined, it was $69,428 for these 2 positions. However, it was appropriated out of the revolving fund, so it wasn't part of our grant. And this year, we're asking that it please be part of our grant so that it is not on a temporary year-to-year basis. We also asked for a 3% cost of living increase, which is $16,000. There's a variety of places we desperately could use those funds, and we have several officers who haven't received any sort of pay increase in years. So we'd like to rectify that. Some more programs that we offer. We run our adoption center 6 days a week. We also do have an adoption center at Petco. And we facilitate off-island adoptions to visitors and people who live somewhere else other than Maui that see a pet and would like to adopt. Maybe they're a visitor here to the island. Reclaims. We offer low-cost and free microchip programs. Pet lost and found reports through our website, daily staff surveillance of Craigslist, and lost and found listings. Because believe it or not, when somebody loses a pet on Maui, we're not the first place that they contact us. As much as we are trying to change that, some people still post on Craigslist, and yet we have their animal. Relocation service, transfer to adoption guaranteed rescues and shelters, and both local and on the mainland. And that is not a county-funded program at all. It is a privately funded program. Hope Fund is another privately funded program, and it provides life-saving medical treatments and surgeries to many animals that come through our door, and they have needs that are well above and beyond what our normal capacity would be able to handle. So. Spay-neuter assistance. So our goal, just like it says, is to decrease the number of animal pregnancies on this island by making no and low-cost spay and neuter surgeries readily available to Maui County. We have a spay-neuter assistance program, and we offer that to the community at our cost. In fiscal 17, we spayed and neutered almost 5,700 animals at no cost to pet owners. 1,285 of those animals were funded by the grant that we received from Maui County, so thank you very much. It took us under 4 months to fulfill that grant. That is the need in Maui County. So while it can be frustrating to feel that we are funding other people's responsibilities, on the other hand, the community is trying to do the right thing and sterilize their pet. And that's what's going to help all of us get to a better place, which is less homeless animals on this island. We conducted 15 MASH clinics, mobile animal surgical clinics, at no cost to the community. and that was since April of 2015. In fact, we had a 2-day MASH clinic just this week on Monday and Tuesday where we sterilized 236 animals in 2 days for the community, and there was still people wanting more. In fiscal 18, I guess it does say that right there, that we did receive a grant from Maui County for the 1,285 dogs and cats. For fiscal 19, we request the $100,000 versus $90,000 for spay and neuter. That will allow us to do 1,428 dogs and cats. The $100,000 is what is the amount of the grant that was approved for spay and neuter in fiscal 17. In fiscal 18, it was dropped to $90,000. I think $10,000 of it was appropriated to Lanai Cat Sanctuary. We're just asking for the $10,000 back into that grant so that we can sterilize more cats and dogs. We do a lot of humane education and outreach, shelter tours, presentations. We run a keiki camp about 9 weeks out of the year for children to come and spend a week with us at the shelter, learning how to interact appropriately and safely with animals and how to be compassionate pet owners as they grow up. Community events, many community events, and where we're doing our best to educate the community. Weekly newsletters, print newsletters, website, social media. We have a strong presence on our social media, radio, television, and print media. Pet disaster preparedness. So staffing of pet-friendly shelters adjacent to human shelters during natural disasters and emergencies in partnership with Maui County Emergency Management Agency and Red Cross. So we set up those, when Red Cross sets up the human shelters, then we'll set up a pet-friendly shelter adjacent to those, because we don't want we don't want a barrier to someone seeking refuge just because they have a pet and they can't bring it in. And this is our new emergency response trailer that this council approved funding for fiscal 18. We're pretty excited about that. And then we also provide dog licensing, end-of-life services, direct release, which is the quarantine process for people bringing pets onto the island, agility classes, and we offer a program called Beach Buddies where tourists can come and check out a dog for a day for a field trip. And that's a very popular program, and it is booked months in advance. So just giving tourists another reason to smile and be happy on Maui, and a way for our animals to go get some fun. Fiscal 19, our request from the Animal Management Revolving Fund, while it is not an exciting item, no one really wants to talk about it too much, we are in serious need of a walk-in freezer. And that's where deceased pets are kept until they can be cremated. Oftentimes, when our officers are out and they're picking up deceased pets off the roadways, they have to be held for a period of time to give owners a chance to come and identify and reclaim their animals. That is part of our contracted services. And sometimes we would have to hold, if there's a deceased animal that's part of a court case, we would have to hold it for extended periods of time, months maybe. So that walk-in freezer, I realized that we didn't put the amounts. I'm just now realizing that walk-in freezer was $25,000 was the request from Animal Management, or I'm sorry, from the Animal Management Revolving Fund. And an enforcement vehicle that is appropriate for the work that our officers do. Our current vehicles, they're aging, and they are not sufficient, efficient, or appropriate for animal control. I wish that I had a picture. I could have put that in there. We have, imagine just a truck with a big cage, enclosed cage on the back. It can only hold one dog at a time, or 2 dogs if they were each in a crate. Unfortunately, though, there's no airflow when the dogs are in a crate, and they overheat very quickly, so it's not humane or safe for us to transport them for any extended period of time that way. So if our officer is out and picks up a stray dog, like they often do, regardless of where they are on this island, they have to make the trip all the way back to the Humane Society to process that animal. It is not efficient. It is not a good use of their time. Additionally, the current vehicles that we have 6 enforcement trucks right now. 2 of them are over 15 years old. 1 is 13 years old. 2 are 11 years old. And then our newest is 4 years old. Collectively, they are driven over 5,000 miles a month. So they are worn out. At any given time, we'll have 1 to 2 vehicles that are down for service. And it really hinders our ability to respond to calls, to emergency calls, to urgent calls, to follow up for cases that our officers have because they don't have a vehicle to drive, even if they're on duty. So I really need 5 of those. I would be beside myself if I got 2 of them this year, and really what I did is ask for 1. Because again, I want to be sensitive to the needs of our community, and everybody does have needs. This vehicle is, we asked for $75,000. All of the compartments are climate controlled, so AC is ducted into them, and they're all separate compartments. So the officer could theoretically go out on the road in the morning and stay out for an extended period of time, even if all those compartments or the majority of them had animals in there, and it would be humane for the animals. And it's appropriate, and it's time. And so hopefully you'll see it that way too. And the impact on our community in fiscal 17. We received almost 6,500 animals. I think that's an average of about 18 animals a day. I'd have to do my math, but Jamie's going to fact check me right there. We sterilized almost 5,700 animals, and the cost of those of about 3,000 so of those animals. The cost for spay and neuter was funded by outside grants. If I can find funding for a need that we have at the Humane Society without coming to the county, I promise you I'm doing that. And we have received hundreds and almost $1 million in the last 4 years of outside funding that we've brought into Maui County to support many of the needs that we have and that the community has without coming to the council. If I come to the council with a request, it's going to be because I can't get it somewhere else. And so the freezer is a good example. Donors don't, as you can imagine, don't want to fund a walk-in freezer for a Humane Society, and they're not going to fund a new vehicle for animal control. We adopted out just over 1,850 animals. Almost 1,000 lost animals were reunited with their families. We relocated over 650 animals, and that is to the mainland, so off of this island, never to return to us. And 176 animals received medical treatment through our Hope Fund, which is a completely donor-funded program. They received surgeries, many amputations, many had to have an eye removed or something like that that was above and beyond medical care that we would normally give an animal that came through our doors. Over 19,000 hours of service from our volunteers. We have about 350 active volunteers. And then almost 11,000 days of foster care were provided by our volunteer pet foster families. So just in a glance to give you an idea of how far we've come in just a few years, this is the the graph on the bar on the left is fiscal 14. We made a lot of changes. That was a pivotal year for us, and anytime I give a presentation, you'll always hear me talk about fiscal 14 because, again, lots of changes, lots of leadership changes for us at the Humane Society, which means that we made a lot of changes in our policies and our initiatives, and we set the bar pretty high for ourselves. Our dog live release rate, and live release rate is a way that we calculate the percentage of dogs that leave our facility for a positive outcome, which means not euthanized. It means adoption, reclaim, or transfer. In fiscal 14, our live release rate for dogs was 67%, which is pretty low because we had many, many dogs that were happy, adoptable dogs that just, there was no place for them. And if you fast forward to fiscal 17, we ended this last year at a 92% live release rate. And what I want to emphasize about that 92%, because if you're not in the industry, it might feel like, okay, well, that's really great. What about 100% or 98%? And what I can share with you is that 90% is the bar that all animal shelters industry-wide try to achieve. Well, if they're going to try to achieve it, that's where they want to hit, is 90%. For us, we have a contract with Maui County that says we can't turn any animal away, that we must accept all animals that come through our door, whether it's an aggressive dog with a bite history or it's unfortunately a dog that is at the very end of its life and the family is bringing it to us for essentially to surrender to us, but there's no hope for this dog to go on and have and be adopted. And so for us to achieve a 92% live release rate, considering those factors, we're pretty excited. And it's because of this, we've received a lot of attention nationally from funders and other people in our industry, because in just a few short years, we were able to do that. And so I really want you to know this because I want everybody in our community to be proud of the Humane Society and the work that we're doing and to know how exceptional this number is. For cats, it's not as warm and fuzzy as dogs, but we almost doubled our live release rate. So in fiscal 14, for tame cats, it wasn't a very happy number. 35% of tame cats left our facility for a positive outcome. We knew we could do better. Even with the challenges on this island with cats and the number of cats, we really wanted to do better. We finished fiscal 17 at a 67% live release rate for tame cats. So again, referring to 2014, we did come under new leadership. All departments were evaluated for efficiency, adequate oversight, reporting, and level of service to the community. We never lose sight of that. We are here to service our community, and we take that very seriously. We implemented a lot of changes, all with an eye for improving department function, streamlining procedures without compromising the care of the animals that came to us, and at the same time providing excellent service to our community. I can't say enough about our management staff. They are an exceptional team of people. They have incredible experience in the animal welfare industry, and we wouldn't be celebrating the successes that we are currently if it wasn't for our management staff. So they truly are the best. And as I said before, we want the community and this council to know about the work that we're doing, how hard we're trying, how serious we take it, that we are very good stewards of the funding that we receive through the county and from our donors. And we want everybody to be proud of the work that we're doing because there's one Humane Society on this island, and we want it to reflect the culture of Maui. This is almost our whole staff. And as I said before, we really wouldn't be able to provide the level of care and the services that we do provide if it wasn't for the partnership that we have together. So thank you. And that's,
Thank you.
and that's it for the animal management
Thank you. Thank you very much. So members, I'm going to open the floor for questions, but before I do that, I'm going to ask the director if she has any comments she'd like to make. This is part of your department.
Aloha Chair, aloha members. I just wanted to commend Jerlene and her fabulous team for the wonderful work that they do with Maui and the care and the really spirit that they take care of the animals with. They do an amazing job, and we're proud to have them as our partner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Ms. Ryman, and I was going to finish my lunch before I came in here because I thought there was a quorum, and I thought I had already been through all this because I spent some time recently at the animal shelter meeting all these great people, and also went to their fundraiser celebrating the 30 years. But it's good to have it in writing because the animals can be very distracting when you're on site. So it's hard to remember all these figures. So I have a couple of questions on the figures, though, because there's a $382,000 and some change shortfall, and then your request in your contracted work, the work that's contracted with the county. And so I really commend you for the piece of that you folks are making up, because I don't know. Because I've been in a business that's contracted with the county, and we wouldn't do it if it wasn't fully funded. So I really, want to thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping we can get you closer to that full funding this year.
Thank you. We just to be clear, we don't want to fund it.
No, I know that. I know that.
But it really is a little bit of a conundrum. It really is, because we do value our partnership. If it was just the $1.7 million, including the spay and neuter grant that Maui County contributes, the animal shelter, it would not look the same or be the same. There would be a fraction of the staff caring for the same number of animals, actually more animals, because we wouldn't be spaying and neutering so many in the community. But at the same time, it's not one-sided. This year we contributed to the community, to our agency, $2.1 million in addition to what our county grants. And if we had to operate just on the 2.1, it wouldn't look the same. So we do absolutely value the partnership.
And I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say, because a lot of other contractors would just say, okay, we're only going to do the part that we're funded for. So you guys, the commitment is obviously there, and so you're going above and beyond. But I just wanted to clarify on the request for the $65,000. Mm-hmm. You said that's 7%, but 7% of what? Of the total county contract?
So yes, 7% is of it's an increase for animal management over what it currently is this year. So
okay, so in essence, what then your shortfall would only be 11% instead of 18%?
Exactly.
Okay.
So
that's just one. And then on top of that is the request for $69,000 for the humane enforcement, and then the $16,000.
3%.
Yeah, the 3%.
Just a cost of living increase. We'd really love to be able to.
I just wanted to clarify what that funding was for. The only other thing I really wanted to say was that, is it inconceivable that if there's 5,000 spay neuters that you could charge, $2 a person and make up that $10,000? Is it inconceivable to just put out a little fee like that, or is it just?
It's not. It is not inconceivable, and every community is different. And there are some communities on the mainland who say, "Oh, free doesn't work." If we say free, we don't get the attention that we would if we offered $10 spay and neuters. When we implemented the free spay and neuter, which, by the way, that is coming to an end because we have exhausted all of our grant funding so far this year. So we have appointments up through December, but starting January 1st, it is no longer free. For us, the discount, offering spay and neuter at a discounted rate, wasn't getting the results we were looking for. People, whether they couldn't pay it or wouldn't pay it, because at the end of the day, regardless of what that reason is, it's still an unsterilized animal in our community. When we received grant funding, which originally we received it from a national organization called PetSmart Charities, we received funding $218,000 to put on 9 MASH clinics. That got the community's attention. Free worked for us. It may not always be able to be free. Like I said, anybody scheduling in January, there is a fee for it. And it's anywhere from $45 up to $200, which is still drastically less than they would pay if they went to a private veterinarian. So to answer your question, yes, there's all kinds of options out there, and we're definitely looking for all of them. For some people, when they are struggling to keep a roof over their head with the cost of living on Maui, or food, or their children's sports or something like that, they are not willing or able to pay anything to sterilize their animal.
Okay, that's fair enough. I just think there's also a lot of people for whom $5 or $10 is just like being free. So maybe an option.
I agree.
An option for a donation or something would be the way to go.
Yes.
But yeah, so thank you. I think that's all the questions I have. But I just really, again, appreciate so much.
you.
I was shocked at all the services you had in
Thank
your
you.
medical facilities, and how nice everything looks, and how happy everybody is because they get to bring their dogs to work.
There's not a lot of perks, so we try to give them where we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Members, any other questions or comments? Mr. Atai.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. I'm trying to factor this in. How much are the trucks that you're asking?
75,000.
And you wanted 5 of them.
Yes, ideally. Well, we have 6 trucks, but 1 truck is only 4 years old. Again, I had a sharp pencil. I was trying to be conservative.
Okay. And then, and do you have a walk-in freezer now?
We don't.
You don't.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
So I hesitate to go into too much detail about our current situation. I'm happy to, though. It is not. It's not appropriate for. I mean, most animal shelters will have a walk-in freezer. Mm-hmm. We have chest freezers. So imagine when somebody comes in looking for their animal, if it's at the bottom. Yeah. Okay. Additionally, we have nowhere to put those inside, so they sit out next to a building in the sun, and it's too much of a load, and they are full to the top, so they are constantly breaking, and we're constantly having to replace them. And finally, I said, this is not okay. It's not okay for our staff, and it's not efficient. They keep breaking. This is not an appropriate way to house these deceased animals.
You know, as you're doing your presentation, I was sitting here thinking, wow, we came a long way from one dog catcher. You know?
Yeah.
So what is a total operating budget?
This year it was $3.869, $3,869,000. Funding that we received from the county, which includes the $90,000 for spay and neuter,
Total?
is 1.701.
1.7 million.
Yes. And I think that leaves about 2.2 that we generate.
Go that side.
A variety of ways.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I understand the breakdowns for each product of service.
Yeah.
What I was trying to get to see if there is a printout, kind of like a accounting printout of the total budget and expenses, and going back, 3 years back, 15, and this year, and then your projection for your 19, and trying to see, I was trying to shifting pages, trying to go from one category to the other, But if I could have it on that, and I'd like to look at, seriously look at how we can support this program. I'm sitting here going, we've come a long ways, and at the same time, I'm thinking, things are at a level of economy of scale, at what point, what is our, can someone do a study of at what point is it best to keep it as it is, or is this worthy of a division?
Okay. For example, division.
In the county.
Oh.
You come from just, those days of the county having one dog catcher.
Oh, I see.
To where we are at. It's just like the ocean lifeguards. We've grown in our county to where, the services has exploded, and the amount of money and all that. So how do we, at one point, we got to factor this and figure out what is best.
Sure, I understand. What I can tell you is that the increases to the Maui County funding that we receive has gone up slightly. So I took over and just at the very end of fiscal 14. And I think that following year we may have received like 3%. And then the next year, I think about 3%, and we appreciated that. This last year, we received funding for those additional staff persons.
Right.
Okay, being a nonprofit allows us to fundraise.
Yes.
And to give you an example, when I took over in fiscal 15, I believe that our combined grant amount from the county was about 1.5 million. We weren't receiving spay and neuter though. And so if you took away spay and neuter this year, it'd be 1.6. So in the last few years, we've received about extra 100, not quite, but combined with the enforcement and the animal management grant, about $100,000 increase. When I took over our budget in fiscal 14, our entire shelter budget was $2.7 million. Mm-hmm. This year, it's 3.869. Yeah. So that's how much the Maui Humane Society has fundraised and received grants from foundations to bring that money to the community. Mm-hmm. So while the county, and we appreciate that, and I hope, if nothing else, that you understand that I really do appreciate that support. I also want the council to know that with those small increases we've received from the council or from the county of about, again, I wish I had the exact number, but it's about $100,000 in 3 years, that increase. Mm-hmm. We've brought in almost $1 million increase, and that has helped our community and the animals. So, and we are able to do that because we are a nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah. And we do good work. So we are rewarded by big foundations that want to reward the good work that we do, and that's why they're willing to fund many of the programs that we offer.
Okay. So would these big foundations be able to possibly support some of the 5 trucks?
They won't. They don't support. That's not their mission. And just like I had said earlier, if I could, believe me, I would be getting that money somewhere else, because I know when Council Member Kelly King was visiting the shelter, I was pointing out to her, oh, and here's our foster coordinator. That's funded through a private agency or organization. Oh, here's our transfer coordinator. She's funded by a private donor. Oh, we upgraded our kennels, and it was $100,000, and I got the money from a private donor. And we expanded our veterinary clinic for $260,000 that we received from an agency. I will always go outside of Maui County to get that funding. But if I'm asking this council for something, it's because I truly can't get it. And I know what the agencies will fund out there, and they will not fund animal control trucks.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Staff, will you note Councilmember Alika's Atai's request for maybe operational expense and kind of.
But thank you so much for your question, because I understand that if you're not in the industry, how would you know what funding we can get? So.
Yeah, I know that, and I know I'm seeing this. I know that's why I kind of want to know the detailed numbers.
Yeah.
And use some hindsight coming from fiscal 15, coming forward to now, and then what your projections will be needed for fiscal 19. And so we need to, I want to be able to fiscally dissect that and also look at our licensing and how much, I don't know off the top of my head, how much income is generated from any of the licensing fees and all that, you know, and how much is used. And
I can tell you that there's two places to license your pet on this island, either the Maui Humane Society or the DMV. The DMV does some, but it's drastically less than what we do at the shelter. We contribute approximately $60,000 a year to the Animal Management Revolving Fund.
And we'll get that to our next agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to note that I appreciate the leveraging. If there's anything that, and anytime you leverage, and sometimes we forget that about nonprofits, you also increase our economics by employing, you know, with, like you say, you're able to have a foster agent, and that creates another position and employment for an individual. So often we overlook that with the contributions into our economy with the nonprofit. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair.
And members, if there are no objections, and I, the chair, will defer this item.
No objections.
Thank you. So segueing into Mr. Atai's question on licensing. So we're now on agenda item HHT-33, licensing of animals other than dogs. You know, we've had this discussion in the past, and it's my intent to receive an update from the Maui Humane Society. Ms. Bryant has prepared a handout to aid in our discussion of this matter. I believe you have the, it says consideration for licensing of cats. And we also talk about the rates. You also have a copy of rates and fees for fiscal year 2018 as it relates to the sale of dog licenses and other animal shelter revenue. And you are also given a copy of anticipated revenues for the Animal Management Revolving Fund, which is monies that come up from our licensing. This discussion is aimed at recognizing issues as it relates to licensing animals other than dogs. So, members, may I ask you to hold your questions or opinions or comments until after Ms. Bryant does her presentation?
Well, I think the word presentation would give me too much credit for what I had time to put together.
Okay.
I apologize in advance for that. But Jamie Fitzpatrick, who's our Director of Operations behind me here, her responsibility is quite broad at the Humane Society, and so she does oversee everything in the front of house, customer service-wise, adoptions, reclaims, licensing, end-of-life services, transfer program, our adoption program, the list goes on and on. She also oversees our animal care department, so the care for all animals that come through our doors falls within her scope of responsibility. So we got together and talked about this. We didn't have time. We received the request, the notice that we would be giving this presentation at the end of last week, and so didn't have the ability to have the time to research fully the idea of licensing cats. But we do have some knowledge and understanding of how that would impact our agency, because it would impact Jamie's front of house licensing ability and her staff, and then also the enforcement department. So at any time, I want to invite Jamie and Mark, if there's something that I'm not covering, please let me know, okay? So that I do want you to have the opportunity to participate in this, okay? What we do know from some communities out there that license cats, and there is less communities that have cat licensing than there's communities that do, we know that compliance is very low. And it is low for a variety of reasons. This second bullet point here, does everybody have the handout that I had printed? This, okay, all right. Studies have shown that caretakers of cats do not necessarily consider themselves the cat's owner. That's why compliance is low. Hawaiian Humane Society, a number of years ago, not a lot of years ago, but somewhere less than 10 years ago, did a pretty broad study on Oahu. And I wish that I had the exact results of that here, but I do know that of the study, it was, do you feed a cat, and any cat, an outdoor cat? And for everybody that said yes, it was something like 70% of people answered no when the question was asked, are you the cat's owner? Even though they feed the cat. So the feeling of ownership towards cats versus dogs is very different. The potential revenue that would be generated from licensing of cats, in our opinion, would not justify the costs of implementing that program and enforcing that program. And then I have to say that we all were looking at each other, asking each other, how do we enforce it? That's a whole other kind of subset of this. Multiple Maui County ordinances would need revisions if licensing of cats was implemented. Right now, there is no leash law for cats, and if there's cats are able to roam at will, there's no law that says they can't, like there is for dogs. Extended stray holds, and Jamie would be happy to go into more detail of this. In fact, take this next one, Jamie.
Certainly.
So, Jamie,
I'm Jamie Fitzpatrick, Director of Operations for the Maui Humane Society. So if licensing for cats in particular was considered to be implemented, it would drastically change what our sheltering would look like at our facility. For example, for dogs who do have a licensing requirement, we have county ordinances that tell us how long we need to keep the dogs before we could choose a disposition for them, whether that's adopting them out, transferring them, or considering euthanasia if that was the most appropriate outcome. So we are mandated by law then to hold those dogs a minimum of 2 days if they're unlicensed and 9 days if they are licensed. So it would follow then that if cats are considering being licensed, cats would need to have mandatory holding periods as well. Now, internally within our shelter, we do have internal holding policies that we've decided we hold cats a certain amount of time before we will put them up for adoption, but those would not be in line with what would need to mirror the dog side if cats were being licensed, and that would mean that we would be forced to hold cats longer than we do now before we could put them up for adoption or place them in other ways, which would then cause the population in the shelter to blossom in a way that we are not set to care for at the moment. We would need to consider additional housing and then additional staff to be able to care for the additional number of cats in care every day. Even if the same number of cats were to come in year to year to year, if they're with us longer, there's more in the shelter every day, so we would need more resources in order to care for them.
And that would mean an additional building, because we are maxed in our current cat building. And then if we did that, it would mean staff to clean and care for those cats. So, and we're not trying to be dramatic by any means, but we're trying to be realistic in what that would look like for us.
I can keep going.
Yes, keep going. Sure.
So in other communities, one of the things that has that can crop up, unfortunately, is if licensing is a requirement for cats, it can deter people from utilizing spay-neuter programs. For example, again, on the dog side, when people come to our shelter to get their dog cost for low cost or no cost, they are still required to pay the licensing fee. It's $11 to get their dog licensed at the shelter, and that is not a fee that can get waived or anything. It is a county fee that needs to be paid. If the same were true for cats, even if we had grant funding to allow free spay and neuter, the customer, the owner, would still need to be paying a license fee. I mean, even if it were just $10 or $11, that can be a deterrent for folks. And if our goal is to help control population, having access to spay neuter should be one of the #1 goals, and anything that puts a barrier in that is not helping with that goal. One of the things that is unique for us, of course, as a rabies-free state, licensing in all other states is tied to rabies vaccinations. Your dog, your pet must be vaccinated for rabies in order to get its license. Since we don't have rabies here, there's not that natural tie, there's not that natural kick in to get that licensing done once they receive that rabies vaccine. And then from our perspective at the shelter, it depends on what the goal of considering licensing is. If one of the primary goals is providing identification for cats and reunification for cats who have gone missing, one of the things that our surgery program does for the cats who come into our shelter for spay and neuter, we already microchip all of those animals who come in. So they are all already leaving with a form of permanent identification that helps us reunify them with their families, owners, or caretakers if they were to go missing and come in stray.
Thank you, Jamie. So, not an easy topic. Mark, I wanted to give you the opportunity. Is there anything you'd like to add as far as the enforcement side?
Well, I'm sorry. Mark Wilson, Director of Enforcement. When they first came to me with this and asked me how I would enforce this, it literally took me days to figure out how this would even come about. For dogs, they're obviously controlled here in the county. We see people walking dogs, never see people walking cats. Mm-hmm. When the officers arrive at a complaint, it's generally a dog complaint, because they're just the restrictions of cats in this county are almost non-existent. So the officer coming in contact with a cat owner that would be checking licensing would be very, very minimal. And to give you an idea, we saw that over 500 strays that we picked up, every one of those strays that leaves the shelter gets licensed. We only picked up 100 cats last year. And 100 cats wouldn't even, we're in the red before we even start licensing cat. It's just not something that would be feasible here for us. And enforcement, I believe, really would be non-existent.
Mark, can you, because I know this was listed on the kind of our agenda, can you just briefly explain how we enforce licensing for dogs? Currently,
The officers, on every call that they go to that involves somebody who has a dog present, they check with licensing, check to see if the person has a license. If they have a license, then we're good. If they don't have a license, they'll either be verbally warned to get the license, or we'll cite them, or we'll issue them a license in the field, because the officers do issue licenses in the field. If it's an ongoing investigation, then we give them a certain amount of time during the investigation to get them licensed, and if they don't get them licensed, then we end up citing them at the end. And also, because Maui County's laws allow us to remove animals that are not licensed, dogs, actually it says specifically dogs that are not licensed. And Hawaii says you cannot own a dog that's not licensed. It wouldn't be the same with cats, so there's so many different laws now that would have to be amended, and sitting through in the gallery here of what it would take to get laws amended, it would just be an astronomical event. But enforcing-wise, we do really well enforcing licensing with dogs, mostly because they're in the public and everybody sees them.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. You know, we often talk about licenses, like you mentioned, was for rabies or what have you, the initial, once upon a time. So would you Let's see, I think we made mention our revolving estimated revenues for FY18 was $67,000 something dollars. How much of that is actually from licensing? Would you know?
So in fiscal 17, about $41,000 of that was for dog licensing. Yeah, and then again, just to be clear, we don't keep any of that.
Right.
That goes to the revolving fund, and then that was the fund that I made the request from for the truck and the freezer.
Right. Thank you. Members, any questions in regards to this particular item? Mr. Atai?
Not really. No questions. It's just that I have a better understanding and the potential of, where some of the collections from licensing fees could go towards. I mean, I think, once we see the numbers and see how much comes in, maybe for the first year we could probably afford your freezer, and we just have to look to see how we can find out how we can assist.
Thank you. If I may, there was one thing that a bit of information I thought might be helpful. Every animal that we adopt out must be licensed. And this last year, or every year, we adopt out approximately 1,000 cats. Is that correct, Jamie? Yes. Okay.
Just over 900.
Okay. So if the fee was the same as dogs, we would generate about $10,000 in revenue from those cats. I can tell you that if this was implemented, we would need much more than that $10,000 to cover the cost of this program. But I did want to at least give that information. I thought it might be helpful.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any further questions, Mr. Atai?
Yeah.
So the spay and the spay and neuter program is free. Yeah.
So we have a program at Maui Humane Society called SNAP, Spay Neuter Assistance Program. If we had no funding from anyone, from any foundation or Maui County for spay and neuter, we would offer spay and neuter at our cost. That cost is, Jamie, it's just approximately?
Yeah, the cost ranges from $45 up to about $200. $45 would be for cats. $200 would be for a very large female dog. So everything in between.
So that's what a person in the community would pay. Again, it is somewhere around a third or a half of what they would pay at a veterinarian. We, in 2015, received a grant. We weren't receiving any spay-neuter funding from the county at that time. In fact, we received a grant last year and then this year, fiscal 17 and 18. That was the funding that Maui Humane Society received from the county of Maui for spay and neuter. So in fiscal 15, which is the year that we had big changes at the Humane Society, we decided we've got to do something. We have got to be proactive and decrease the number of animals coming through our door, because for us in the industry, it makes you feel helpless. Every day, it's an inpouring of animals. And the only way that we can participate in decreasing that is through spay and neuter. So we went out and aggressively looked for funding. And then thankfully, in addition, so it takes about $400,000 a year to provide free spay and neuter to the community at our capacity to provide that spay and neuter. And so, as you can see, we received funding aside from Maui County, and we were really appreciative that Maui County participated in the spay and neuter program. Many counties do, because they understand that it helps their community, and we were just so really thankful that the council gave us the grant that last year and this year too.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've convinced us that this probably isn't, but it's interesting because the second bullet point, that caretakers of cats do not necessarily consider themselves a cat's owner, I thought that was referring to most cat owners that I know who think their cats own them.
Yes.
Instead of the other way around.
That too.
But So I was just curious about this this $10,000 that you think you might get if if it was required. Right now you're already doing registration, right, with the chips. So what does that cost?
So we're already doing licensing for dogs who get spayed or neutered or adopted from our shelter.
Okay.
And we also, any animal who gets spayed or neutered at our clinic gets a microchip for when they go home. So the microchip is, the little grain of rice sized chip planted in the back of the shoulder
Right.
blades that provides that permanent form of identification. So if the animal goes missing and gets brought into a shelter or vet clinic, gets scanned so we know who it belongs to and goes home.
So, but what does that cost? to put
So the
that chip
cost
in?
on that, it depends. For us at this time, our cost on those chips, not including staff time or database management or anything, the physical chip itself is approximately $7.
Okay.
And then there's the staff time to implant the chip and manage the database and everything
Okay,
like
so
that.
so it's costing you about that much right now to do it.
Just hard cost of supply, yes.
Yeah, so if you're saying that it's going to cost you more, I mean, you're already doing that, but if it's going to cost you more, that's mostly what you're talking about is enforcement that would cost more than that, what you could bring in.
There's a bunch of pieces to it as well.
Okay.
So when we talk about the microchipping, and when we talk about licensing doesn't have to be tied to microchips themselves. Some communities, cats are expected to wear a tag for a license. So imagine the tricks that can pose. Cats don't often keep collars on. Some communities do tie it to those microchips. But again, if you're walking around the community, you can't tell if a cat has a microchip or not. So that's where enforcement becomes really tricky because there's not a way to know if that has been done or not. Other costs that would have to be considered. We as the Maui Humane Society already take this on the dog side. And again, like Jerlene said, the revenue that comes in for licensing goes straight into that revolving fund and does not stay with us. But we as the Maui Humane Society administer the licensing program for the majority of dog licenses that happen. We are the ones who generate and send out the reminder letters for compliance when people's licenses are due. That all we do in-house. We are putting the stamps on those envelopes and doing all of those things, and that money isn't necessarily directly coming back to us to manage that. And then our officers are in the position of enforcing, is your dog licensed, are you due, and everything. So there's the staff time on that as well.
Okay, so you don't get to take the cost of the microchip or any of that out of that money you're putting into the revolving fund?
No.
That's interesting.
Okay. But just to clarify, but for dogs, for licensing, it's a physical tag that they get, and those tags are provided to us by the county.
Oh, they don't get the chip?
Well, dogs who are adopted from us also get a microchip, and that's through our adoption program and services. Licensing, though, for dogs in our county is a physical metal tag that is provided to us by the county and issued at our shelter or at the DMV.
Okay, so they'll have both?
If they're adopted from us, they will have both. If they are spayed or neutered through us, they will have both. Yes.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I don't think I have any more questions, but it was an interesting concept to try to understand.
Thank you.
Chair.
Director, did you have a comment?
I did. I would just like to let everyone know that the Maui Humane Society is the only non-county entity that contributes to the revolving fund, And they contribute about $60,000, as Jerlene said, a year. And the other entity that contributes is DMV. They collect dog licensing, and they're just like under $5,000 that they contribute. So, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or further discussion? I really want to thank you. I know we try to bring you in at least once a year so that we can get updated. I really appreciate the professionalism, and I'm sure our constituents, our taxpayers, will truly support the kind of support you need to continue the work that you do. So on behalf of our committee and our council, I want to say mahalo and thank you for being here. Thank you,
Chair.
So members, one more item on our agenda, if I may.
Chair, can we take a quick break?
Yes, we can take a
Thank
quick
you.
break. The meeting of the Housing, Human Services, and Transportation Committee will now reconvene. Before we go on to our next agenda item, members, I failed to ask in regards to the agenda item that was before us on HHT, what was it, 33. HHT 33. If there are no objections, the chair will defer the item.
No objections.
Thank you. Members, HHT-24 is an item, the last time I've heard of this was in 2013, I believe. It's called the First Time Home Buyers Program. It's my intent as chair to receive a status update from the Department of Housing and Human Concerns on the First Time Home Buyers Program that I guess it was in place for fiscal 10, fiscal 11, fiscal 12, and fiscal 13. You've received a copy of the program information sheet from 2012. I just want to open up this discussion on this item. We talk about affordable housing funds. We talk about all the different efforts that we can do to help to house our residents. We allow maybe about $100,000 for our community land trust for them to house at least one family. We help to other efforts on the nonprofit with homes for our residents. And I thought it'd be a discussion that would be interested at this time, what it's called Maui County's First Time Home Buyers. And I'm going to ask Director Ryman to give us her opening comments and any kind of update that you may have. I know it's not in place today. It's no longer in place. Council had removed that program, I think, in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just for us to get the thought process going. Is this something we may want to reconsider sooner or later, however you want to look at it? Director Ryman.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha. So as Chair mentioned, the program was funded at $200,000 per year for fiscal years 10, 11, 12, and 13. Each year after, we have put in for funding in our budget, and it has been removed. So the total households that were provided with grants during the 4-year period is approximately 52. Grant specifics are that the funds can only be used for down payment and or closing costs, and the maximum grant did not exceed $15,000 per household. And we would execute a grant agreement with the grantee. The grantee has a 15-year lien on the property, and the grantee must be occupying the unit. They also are required to provide hazard, hurricane, and flood insurance. Public notification about this program was handled through advertisements in local newspapers servicing the funding locations. This is audio, video, and or print media. And we also had some workshops and informational meetings that we held. To be eligible for a grant, you must be a resident of Maui County, at least 18 years old, be a U.S. citizen or resident alien, and at 140% AMI or below. We would require 3 copies of the last 3 years of your federal income tax returns, as well as bank statements. The person cannot have 50% or more interest in property for prior 3 years, and we would require all homeowners to attend homeowner counseling and or financial literacy classes. Additionally, total household assets couldn't be no more than $75,000 cash, securities, stocks, and bonds. Excluded from that would be retirement accounts and pension funds. Property eligibility would be fee simple or leasehold, single family or multifamily. Residential lots with plans to construct single family dwelling within the next 2 years, or leasehold property with units to be built within the next 2 years. The process would be that the grantee must meet eligibility requirements that I mentioned previously, and they complete an application form with a pre-approval letter from a mortgage lender. The county would conduct a lottery, and we would notify individuals in writing. We would require repayment if the grantee refinances their first mortgage loan, if the grantee no longer uses the property as their principal residence, if the grantee sells the property, and if the grantee provided fraudulent information. We have certain exemptions for repayment if they have construction takeout loans, if they're streamlining their financing just to get a better rate, or if they do capital improvement. Buddy Almeida was on board in the Housing Division when this program was taking place, so he can answer any questions. But I would like to close with our 2016 Housing Demand Study. The number one reason residents can't buy is because it's too expensive. Number two, second reason they can't buy is because they can't afford the down payment, followed by they cannot qualify for a loan. So we feel like this program is a valid one and can help our local residents to obtain housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Almeida.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I guess just to add to Director Ryman's opening comments, the 4 years that we did implement and oversee this program in the department, it was very successful. We utilized all the funding each year that was granted to us. It was a line item grant from the general fund. I have to also probably just comment that at the time we implemented this program and it ran was during the recession period when the timing was really good because prices were low. So the funding that we were allocated, the amount we were able to grant, which was $15,000, really helped bridge gaps for a lot of people. I'm very hopeful in discussions that we can revive this program. If so, as a caveat, we would probably need to consider the amount of funding that we would want to give to the program based on the current market, which is much higher than it was back then, and possibly increasing the amount that could be granted based on the need. But those are just comments and my personal feelings, and it's open for discussion. But thank you so much for bringing this up.
Thank you. Before I open up to the membership on the discussion or questions, so how was the program monitored, and was there a give back time? I mean, was there a return of the funds so that it can continue to revolve, and who monitors, and were they out of, I said, what was it here, 52, out of the 52, how many are still in their homes, and if they've left their homes using the down payment, is there something in place where they have to return that monies?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a lien is recorded on the property. So if the homeowner looks to refinance or to sell, the title company contacts our department. Housing oversees these grants. And if they do any of the things as mentioned by Director Ryman to trigger the repayment of the grant, the entire grant amount of $15,000 is paid back to the general fund. The owner occupancy period is 15 years. So even if you refinanced and did a cash out loan, which is against program requirements, or you sold in year 14 and 6 months, you would still repay the entire $15,000. And it did go back into the general fund for reuse. As far as the number of individuals over the 4 years who have sold or refinanced and repaid the grant, I do not have an exact number, but I do not estimate that it is more than 10. I would estimate somewhere in the range of 7 to 8 in the 4 years since the program was discontinued. Thank you.
So out of the 52 and 7, well, let's use the max 8 that the fundings are returned. So are we to understand and the balance from that 52 are still occupying?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Members, for the Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. As Mr. Almeida said, prices have gone up and things have changed since the initial program. I've had discussions before with those in the financial community about what they felt would be necessary to really help, and they was thinking something in a matter of $25,000, which is a little high, it sounds to us, but that is probably what is necessary to really get these people into their home. There are several ways we can do it. It can go at a $15,000 grant with a $10,000 no interest loan, bringing it up to 25, or of course a grant for 25. So we do have options of how we structure it, but the bottom line would be they would have enough money to go over there and truly help them acquire a home. Either a direct grant and of course no interest $10,000 loan. That's fairly easy to pay back. It doesn't add a lot to their monthly payments over that period of time. It's a relatively small amount. And again, it's getting them into the home. So I would like us to consider that, and if housing could make comment, but it seemed to be that would be the best way of getting that $25,000 without depleting the initial sum that we have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Councilmember King, any comments, questions?
Yeah, well, actually, I think the thing that is most interesting to me is if we have any studies, any data, any surveys we've done that show what success looks like for this program, rather than just, yeah, we gave out all the money, but what did we get for it? I mean, what level? I mean, how many people are? I know you said 7 to 8 repayments, but what were the causes of those repayments? What are the experiences of the people who, how important was that $15,000 to that purchase of that home and those kinds of things? So I think I would feel more comfortable seeing that, quantified in some kind of a study or survey or something, rather than just, yeah, they were very happy kind of a thing.
Any comments to that, Ms. Almeida?
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member King. Unfortunately, yeah, we don't do any outgoing surveys with regards to, oftentimes, we don't speak directly with the owners when they go through this process of either selling or refinancing. We work with the title companies to make sure that we're repaid. I think it might be difficult to, well, I guess anything is possible. We could try and set up some type of survey and try to get the home order to complete it to see why the need was that they had to sell and repay the grant. But unfortunately, yeah, we don't have that information as to what the need was for each individual in each individual case.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not asking for names, but it would be good to see that information, to see what the original need was, how many people applied, how many people received the funding each year. That kind of information, because otherwise we're just kind of going on hearsay if we try to recreate this program.
Oh, yeah, definitely the need for the program was very, very high. We averaged about 150 applications per year and could only give out 13 grants.
Okay, and then were there, I guess the other part of it, were there people who, because they didn't get the grant, weren't able to buy their house? I mean, do we have any of that kind of information? Do we know, how dire it was?
No, unfortunately, we don't deal with all the individuals who applied. I would imagine that a lot of them were not able to obtain financing due to a lack of down payment, but we only deal with the applicants that actually get the grant funding. Okay,
so when you came to the council to try to get this program started that was denied, I guess, the last 2 years or so?
4 years.
4 years. What did you, is this all you brought, was the parameters of the program, or what else did you bring to support the need?
The information that we're going over today, we spoke about the program in length, the successes, the interest, the number of applicants, and discussed the program in general with the county council at that time.
Okay, but there's nothing in writing, that there's no reports about that, or data or surveys or anything? It's just basically anecdotal?
I would imagine the minutes from those meetings would be the best way to get the information that was discussed with the body at that time.
No, I don't want, I understand you came and you said what you're saying today, but I'm saying what information, because this is just the parameters of the program. You know, what information do you have to show that there's a dire need for it?
As Director Ryman mentioned earlier, the impediments to individuals being able to obtain a home, the down payment is, I believe, second on the list. So there are housing studies that we have done that show a dire need for these types of programs.
Okay, but I mean, 15,000 when you're talking about down payment is a small portion of that down payment. So, you know, I would just like, if we're going to fund it, something like this or push for it, I would like to see something a little more concrete as far as data showing the success of the program. And maybe even, Chair, what was the reason for ending the funding? So if there was a report from
you would have to go back to committee
Right.
report or the council, because the council made that decision.
Right.
Or the budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would like to see the reason why the council.
I'll make a note for staff to do the follow-up with your inquiry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tai, any comments, questions?
Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very interested in entertaining, creating, or revitalizing a first-time home buyers program, and looking at how do we serve more. You know, with your findings that the number 2 reason is because of the down payment. However, I think we still need data to move us forward, and some of the resources that I'd like to get is a representative from the real estate industry, a representative from the finance industry, and or from our own finance department, because what if we create a hybrid? What if we create a $5,000 grant with a $20,000 zero interest or very low interest loan, but we need input from our own. If we are going to be the source to loan it, how much would it cost the county or from the finance department? And so what would be their suggested interest rate to be set? I'd look at a very low interest rate. I think you want to serve more. So if you're saying back with using hindsight that on average you had 100-something applications per year, you were only able to give out 13 a year, and factoring that we're getting 100, how can we help close to the 100? And so maybe not give out as much, not give out as much, and try to create either a very small grant with a very low interest loan. I don't think, I would like to pursue the different kinds of options and hybrids that, we could come up with, and understanding the market and, what is really needed. The assumption of a home, is it 20,000? Is it 30,000?
Yeah.
And so how do we assist?
Mr. Tai, I'll ask staff, and we'll meet with our housing department, as well as they can make recommendations. So staff can also follow through as different financial entities that can participate or willing to give us that kind of advice or support in regards to your suggestion and Mr. Carroll's.
Yeah,
So,
I think we need to help our families. One of the earlier issues I realized is that, how do we stop the displacement of our young families that want to pursue home ownership, and yet they choose to leave because they're getting displaced out of the market. How do we assist them? And I know we're looking at efforts of creating affordable housing, but then the other number 2 reason of why you don't get it is not having the ability to come up with that lump sum of money for the down payment. So, I think we can pursue that and look at that, as well as I know that I mean, from what I'm researching and the info that I'm getting back, 80% of the demand is asking for affordable rentals. So there's affordable rentals, and so there's 20% that's asking for home ownership. So we gotta attack this problem from all angles, and
Right.
I'm open.
Thank you, thank you. So I guess in accordance to what Council Member King is requesting, so I guess what we would want also, if I understand what she's asking, is how can we measure the compliances and the success when the program was in place? And I guess what sort of rate of success do we have? So I'll have staff follow up with your department so that we can have that in response to that. Councilmember King.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's exactly what I was asking for, except I think you put it better than I did. But I also want to thank Member Atai, because I think that's an excellent idea to follow up with our finance director and get some input from there. And he actually was a banker, so he may have some ideas about the portions of funding that could be the most effective, and what portions of that, how much to grow this fund if we're going to do this, how many people we can, and I believe because it's a grant, it's not really a loan repayment, but the repayments came when somebody violated the terms of it, and so then they had to give back the money. But I think it's a great idea to kind of collaborate on this with the finance director and get some input. Our new finance director that we will hopefully be approving, who is highly qualified.
Or some financial entities.
Yeah, I mean, the banks that give out home loans,
right.
I think those
mortgage
would be
lenders,
good.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
As well as what Mr. Otai mentioned, the sellers of the homes that we have buyers. So in terms of us, two things. What are your thoughts? Obviously, but I'm not going to read it. You tell me. What are your thoughts of revitalizing this program, as well as in terms of resources, personnel, and funds? Just off the top of your head at this time, or you can send it to us in writing. What's necessary for this program, so we can do all the measurements of budget. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
We are definitely hopeful. We have applied to continue the grant every year. Since it stopped receiving funding, we've tried, and we've put it in the budget every year in hopes of it being resurrected. We feel also that it is a very valuable tool and a much needed tool in the community. There are many subsidies that a homeowner can try to obtain to purchase their home, and we feel these are one of the means that can be utilized to bridge that gap. As far as what it would entail to resurrect it based on the current marketplace, I would need to do more research. I was also in lending. I was a banker for 16 years prior to coming to the county, so I would have to take a look, and I could also talk to the finance director and to others, but I would need a little bit more time to put together a recommendation on what would work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe that's what the members are asking for, and we'll give you the time necessary so we can have a definite report that we can have further discussion on that basis. Members, any other questions, comments? Thank you for being here. We have non-voting member Yukile Sugimura with us. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Chair, can I just make one comment? I just wanted to make it clear that the information is really important, because if we're gonna advocate for this as a committee or even individual members, I don't like to advocate for things based on something that someone told me or third-party statements. I like to have data and be able to base my statements on hard data. So I just wanted to make you aware. I mean, make sure that you understand that I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. It's just that I would like to be able to advocate for this program, but I want to see hard facts and figures.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else has any comments? Councilmember Sigmund.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So great to see this on the agenda. I'm sorry I came in a little bit late, but I will say that being out in the community and just seeing what's happening with our young working families, that there is a need for this. I do understand the council, when it did this in years back, because I see your fiscal years 10, 11, 12, 13, that it was done, and that there must have been some kind of analysis done on when it happened and why it stopped maybe. And maybe I did hear about wanting to help more families, and I wonder how we can do that. It is something very good, and we do really need to help, first-time home buyers. So I'm interested also in seeing this happen. So thank you, Chair. Thanks for bringing this up.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. It's always hard to really get a program like this going. However, it really is important, and if we don't do it, we're really not serving all of the people of Maui County. Because even those that have homes, working, and they don't even have family members that need a home. But these people that need homes, that have to have homes, they are part of us. They are our people. They're the people outside there that are on a lower income that actually make this island what it is, through labor and heart. I came up with that $25,000, and you can research it all you want, upside down and sideways. All you have to do is pick up a newspaper and look at the current prices and where we're at. The $25,000 is, I don't think anybody's going to come up with another number. I don't care how much research you do. I'd like to see that as a base number discussed. I came up with some other options, like $15 and a $10,000 no interest loan paid back, because the 15 was successful, and we can go by that, and then I think we can carry it further that way. Members want more information, that's fine, but I don't want us to lose sight of what needs to be done in a relatively short period of time. And of course, it's almost a joke when we talk about us in the county doing something in a short period of time. I realize that.
Exactly.
But we need to go there and not get too bogged down, because we know we had a program that worked already. If we can get more information so everybody feels more comfortable with it, fine. But I think we should really start looking and trying to focus ourselves that we really need to get the money outside there and available. Because for so many, that's the only way they're ever going to be able to go over there and be able to acquire these homes. The second thing is we were talking about affordable rentals. All right, that has to be apples and oranges. We really don't want to mix up what we're talking about with affordable rentals. I pushed affordable rentals from the first year I was on this council back in 2001. And it was very unpopular. I could get no support from my fellow council members or the administration. Now we are realizing how important this is, because without a good, the availability of rentals, that's one of the things that pushes prices up. Mm-hmm. And not everybody outside there is going to be able to get a home. Mm-hmm. I mean, we say, yes, everybody should be able to have a home, but it's just not going to happen. Right. We have a large portion of our population is never going to be able to do it, or they might not be able to do it for 20 or 30 years. Mm-hmm. And we just don't want to leave them. Well, everybody here heard the testimony in Hana. It's over here too. Go down Punine Avenue, go down Lono, go Kamehameha, go any of those. Go 9 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. You better take a counter, because there's so many cars over there, you're going to lose track. Mm-hmm. So we really need to make rentals available, because it's a quality of life for our people too. I was raised in a multi-family house. Oh yeah, it was nice with my cousins and all of that. And everybody says, oh yeah, that's the old days. Hey, but it wasn't all that nice. It was hard. Mm-hmm. And especially hard on older people. Sure, we love our grandchildren. I have 11 great-grandchildren. But to have everybody in one house, it's a strain.
You would stay over here, yeah?
And when you have families inside over there trying to make a living, and you have one refrigerator, and one family comes home and finds their food's missing, you think that doesn't create a strain on this household? No, it's hard. So we really need to work on that other side of the affordable rentals. But again, that should be addressed separately from what we're talking about today. Today, I think we really need to focus on the subject at hand. I firmly believe, with the experience we've had over all these years with housing, that at this moment in time, $25,000 is a reasonable amount that will really help these people get into their homes. If we don't want to give a whole grant for that again, I think a 15-10 would be effective and work. If other members want other documentation or something, well, that is up to the committee. But I think that I would hope that we would look at that as our goal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. That being said, I think we should look at all scenarios. You know, can the homeowner come up with a certain percentage? You know, can we come up with another percent? So I think for us with the department and staff to see what we can come up with. Any further discussion or comments? Yes.
Since Mr. Carroll brought up the rentals, I just want to share with housing that being at the Upcountry Farmers Market, the last couple of months, I ran into two tenants or residents of Kulamalu, and oh my God, tears in their eyes. They're so grateful for that project. So thank you very much for doing it. One person came and was in a wheelchair and broke my heart just to hear her story. And another person was telling me for the last 2 years she was like going from house to house and sleeping on friends' sofas, and she said she prayed for it and was way down on the list, but just so happened, thanks to God and the County of Maui, thank you very much for that project. She was very, very grateful.
That's the Kulamalu.
Yeah,
Malu
Kulamalu,
project.
yes.
Yeah,
Kulamalu
Mr.
project.
Atai.
Thank you.
Chair, I want to thank you for bringing this item up on agenda. You know, this first-time home buyers program, I think, we need to figure it out. And so I want to say thank you for bringing this item up.
Thank you.
And another request, if I can, later on for the future, is addressing affordable housing programs in that also.
Thank you, Mr. Atai. I think we are all feeling the pain.
Rentals.
We are feeling the pain when we hear our residents. Often, too, I think some of the pains that I personally feel is how do we allow buildings to be built without getting so much conditions that no one can afford to build or pencil out. So we have to take all these different scenarios into consideration. Our last land use decision yesterday was a tough one. Yeah, but we had to weigh everything that is appropriately addressed, and that makes it very conflicting for many of us. So members, I hope our bucket list is number one to build a bucket with our giving our residents homes that that they can call home, whether it's rental, multifamily, single family, affordable, or we have many that probably are in the moderate. We have those that are in needs, and how we can expedite the process that government put barriers to, and that's not only include us. There's state government, there's federal, there's so much that barriers, but there are so much opportunities out there too that government provides. So members, if we have no further discussion, and if there are no objections, the chair will defer this item. So members, thank you. I really appreciate you being here. Squeeze, yeah, if I'm going to have one quorum or not, and I think many of us are facing that this past months, and hopefully we'll be able to bring ourselves together to provide each committee a full quorum as such. So I also like to take the time to thank the administration for being here and for allowing us to work together to find solutions to our needs in the community. I also like to thank our capable staff, Tammy Frias, Shelley Espeleta, and Samalu Mataava. But most of our members, thank you for being here. This ends the agenda, and again, with that, the November 2nd, 2017 meeting of the Housing, Human Services, and Transportation Committee is now adjourned.
There's a dark in the sky.